Hi, this is Richard and Craig with the first of our weekly feedback videos for maintaining a mindful life.
Yeah.
Each week we're going to make a feedback video, try and keep it brief, based on all of the top comments happening on the discussion forum. So please keep commenting. We've had 888 comments so far.
And when we say top comments, it's not just those that attract a lot of other comments, but things that might be of importance or interest that our mentors are coming across as they look through the great discussions week by week.
Indeed. So please follow our mentors.
Yeah, Sherelle and Jen.
Yeah. Craig, lots of, well, first of all, actually, just on commenting, a few learners this time around have been kind of oversharing, maybe sort of mentioning people by name that they're having issues with in relationships, or maybe saying, maybe a little bit too much about some of the issues that they're facing.
Yeah.
So we'd certainly encourage mindful sharing on the forums.
Yeah.
So perhaps before hitting send, just kind of step back for a moment, take a breath, and just sort of think, okay, this is going out into the public domain. Is this an appropriate level of detail? And I guess weighing that up against, of course, we are also encouraging all of our learners to actually share what's really going on for them in their lives. So just making maybe discerning judgments about that.
Always respectful, and I think is a good principle. Yeah, lots of interesting stuff about meditation and people finding obviously the longer practices really helpful for deepening the mindfulness because it's but also the benefits of those little commas. No matter how brief they might be, they're fantastic frequent reminders throughout the day, and so a number of learners are realizing how helpful that can be.
So any meditation's good, whether it's a minute, 15 minutes, something in between.
And it's not just the length of practice; it's the frequency of practicing, the frequency of remembering that really helps. And if we're doing those formal practices on a regular basis, then in the midst of activities we start to notice a lot more often, a lot more quickly, where our attention is when it's gone totally off track. So that's been really helpful. Also noticing that, say, in the listening process, so the listening meditation, and just noticing what the mind does. So we hear a sound, and then the mind starts to comment on the sound. Oh, that's such and such, and then it starts to have a little...
What's making that noise? I wish that would shut up.
Yeah, and next thing we're listening to an internal commentary about the sound.
Rather than the sound itself.
The sound. And so if we notice that, it's not like we need to get irritated about that. It's just the mind doing what the mind does, labeling, commenting, judging, etc. So we just notice that, we let that come and go, but we come back to the sound. We listen to the sound rather than the internal commentary about it.
And actually, that's one of the points of meditation. I mean, on one hand, it's concentration, learning to focus on, let's say, the sound and stay in touch with just that thing. But on the other hand, meditation also helps us to develop awareness. So we start to notice those habits in the mind. And far from being a problem, that's actually a very useful thing because the mind is constantly putting an overlay of thoughts and judgments and evaluations on everything we experience, not just sounds. Or it's fixating on certain things, or it's trying to block out unpleasant things. And so to start noticing that gives us a lot of insight into the way our mind works and the way that we create problems for ourselves.
Yeah, so we're listening there, and it could be birds singing. Which bird is that? It could be a car, and we hear, and oh, that's a diesel, and oh, gee, there's a lot of particulate pollution with diesels, and maybe we should have, oh, what is it, where we're, But the same kind of thing is happening in communicating, which we'll come back to later on, that somebody says something, all of a sudden we're not listening to the person. We're listening to...
our own ideas about what they've said.
That's right. And we don't even realise that the attention's gone off in that way. So very helpful.
Now, Craig, we've got a lot of repeat learners on this course. There are a lot of newbies, so welcome to them, but also a lot of people that have done this course, in fact, every time it's run. And we love when they share their experiences because there's a lot that can be learned from that. And one of the things that some of the repeat learners have been talking about this week is how they establish a meditation practice while the course is running, and then when the course finishes, they somehow lose that momentum, lose that routine. I think that's a really interesting thing, and there's probably a lot of learning actually that can come out of that.
Well, there's nothing better than the shared commitment of a group. Those regular reminders from watching the videos, doing the course, and those things help to keep it in the forefront of our mind. But of course, at the end of the course, and it's very easy for old habits to just come back. And so,
Perhaps just starting the day by checking a phone or just jumping into activity rather than taking that time to stop and meditate. Or
so we really want to make use of this time we've got doing the course to really establish on a regular basis, so that when the course ends, there's a kind of momentum to the practices. And if we get through those first few weeks after the course ends and maintain those practices rather than get complacent, then we'll probably find we've established a long-term habit.
Yeah. I remember when I first started meditating, probably the first few years actually, I would meditate for a period of time, then I'd somehow just stop for a few days or weeks or maybe a month or something, and then I'd start again. And I think that's pretty normal. A lot of people talk about that. But it did reach a tipping point after a while where if I didn't meditate, and now, of course, if I don't meditate for a single day, that day is just totally not as good as a day when I do meditate. And that's a good tipping point to reach. But I guess just for learners who are starting out, it's pretty normal to get a routine going and kind of lose it. And I think the key is the moment you realise you've stopped meditating, just start again. That'd be a good time to do a comma or set aside some time to do a longer practice.
Yeah. One learner was noticing that the mind and body protesting at the thought of longer and more complex meditations. And interesting to notice that protesting in anticipation
at the thought of it, not actually doing it.
There it is. So here and now, in the present moment, we get some idea in our head of a long meditation practice.
Yeah.
And we develop some idea of burden or how onerous it might be, and when we're totally out of touch with the present moment. And any longer practice is just the same as a short practice in the sense of just in the moment, each breath, each moment, each sensation. But the mind runs ahead. Oh, there's a long way to go. Oh, just back to this moment.
Yep.
It's like that with running, a longer distance than we might have normally.
Says the actual marathon runner in the room. Yeah.
The actual step by step is very achievable, but the mind's thought of how many more steps to take, that's where the mental burden comes in, not with the actual step-by-step process, but by the anticipation, the projecting into the future. And that's really a very useful practice to just come back, and it's just one moment at a time.
Yeah, and most people find actually that when they practice like that they start to enjoy the meditation.
Yeah.
Because actually doing it is far less sort of difficult or unpleasant than the anticipation.
Yeah.
Having said that, a lot of learners have noticed that it's easy, relatively easy, let's say, to meditate when they're feeling calm and relaxed, but a little more difficult when they're feeling stressed or tired or unwell. And of course, that's the point, isn't it? That when mindfulness is about getting in touch with what's actually happening. And so if we're feeling uncomfortable in some way and we start to practice meditation, it's hard to sit with that. And I notice in my private practice, in my teaching, quite often my students or clients will they'll establish a routine for 2 or 3 weeks, and then all of a sudden they come in, they're like, oh, I didn't meditate this week. I guess I just got too busy. But if you start to dig, quite often they've started to bump into difficult material, stuff that was a bit hidden and it's uncomfortable and hard to be with. But the whole point, of course, is to keep persevering gently and to learn to sit with that without reacting to it, judging it, trying to get rid of it. And that's really the whole point of the practice.
Yeah, and it's not easy to sit with the uncomfortable stuff. It's a little bit like sailing. It's like sailing on a day with nice sunshine, gentle breeze, just ripple on the water, easy, pleasant. And then another day, sailing and it's howling a gale and, waves everywhere. And it's hard to stay on an even keel. And we think that the easy and more pleasant day is the good practice, and we think that the day where it's really, we're working hard to stay on an even keel is the less good day. But actually, if we want to hone our skills in sailing,
which one's going to teach you more about sailing?
Exactly, and it's not necessarily the easy day, and so we often think that pleasant, easy is good, challenging, coming back, cultivating acceptance, is not so good. But that's actually the more useful practice. Yeah, they'll stand us in good stead in day-to-day life when things confront us. Guided practice or not guided practice. Well, really, again, ultimately, the guided practice is like training wheels on the bike, helps us to stay on an even keel. But when we're practicing without the guidance, our attention goes off more. We might get more judgmental, but we have to internalize the awareness, internalize the attitude of acceptance and non-reactivity. And so that's actually, again, the more useful practice. Take the training wheels off, we have to develop our balance a lot more than when the trainer wheels are on. So that's the most useful practice.
Yeah.
But, there's no should have guided or not. It's just like, in a sense, learn to wean ourselves off the guided practice. Ultimately, I think it's a good long-term view.
Yeah. And you said it's just like physical exercise. You start small, build it up over time. Don't run a marathon straight away, and just build that fitness, that mental fitness.
Yeah. A lot of interesting stuff about communication this week.
So there's a lot there, isn't there? Once you start to pay attention to how you communicate. Yeah. There's lots going on. So learners noticing that they're planning what to say rather than really listening. Coming back to what you were saying before, we start to listen to the person, but then we start to listen to our own thoughts about what we think they're saying or what we're going to say next. And just noticing that is the first and most important step in some ways, isn't it? To be aware of that. And as a practice, treat communication like a meditation. Just keep coming back to what is this person actually saying. Curiosity, openness.
Yeah. And then we may find that our own response arises in a more spontaneous way. There was also some discussion about can we be too accepting or too overly tolerant. Not really, not if it's true acceptance, because true acceptance is just accepting the situation that in the present moment it is what it is. If we interpret acceptance as being apathy or just, disinterested in an unhelpful way, then that's not particularly useful, and that's not mindful acceptance, because in a present moment there might be something happening and we accept, well, this is what's presenting itself in the moment, but we also recognize there's a need to respond, and we have to accept that responding might be challenging or not easy, but it's required in the moment.
So it's really just about accepting what's actually true.
Being
the
open
situation,
to it.
What's happening for us, our own thoughts and ideas about it, but then also acting sometimes, isn't it?
Responding, yeah.
And this is definitely not about, mindfulness is definitely not about allowing bad behaviour, allowing other people to abuse us. I mean, sometimes we just need to accept that we need to act. And that's the acceptance there, that I need to say something or do something here. But it's about maybe having that come from a place of wisdom rather than reactivity.
And that's when, for example, somebody's cultivating more acceptance, they might notice that in reactive mode they would have reacted to something and flared up a situation. It was no particular need to do that. When more accepting in a mindful way, might recognise don't need to be reacting to that, but to have that discernment about when we do need to respond. And acceptance is not apathy.
No.
Two very different things.
And, as some of our learners pointed out, it's one thing to practice mindfulness in connection with somebody else when you're having an actual conversation, but then when we're communicating through email or on our phone or social or using social media, there's that extra sort of step of sort of being removed, isn't it? From the senses, from the person, and that's when we need to apply even more mindfulness to our communication.
Yeah. Yes, that's right. And being mindful when speaking as well, to actually notice where the speaking is coming from. There's some interesting stuff around technology this week as well.
Yeah, that's what I was just saying. So so exactly. Once we're using technology and we don't have that person in front of us, it becomes even easier to be unmindful in our communication. So we want to really slow down and notice, what am I posting? What am I sharing? What am I saying? What am I, to really... I think pausing before hitting send is a pretty good practice, to have a look and think, okay, if this person was in front of me, would I say this to their face? Yeah. And if not, maybe I don't want to post it.
But and so how we read something as well. The digital detox, a number of people are detoxing, which is great. Yeah. There's also an interesting study that came out just quite recently that for young people who were using social media the most, especially the visual forms of it.
Like Instagram and Snapchat rather than Twitter, for instance.
So what they found was that the more it was being used, the more it increased narcissistic tendencies and characteristics. Which
in some cases putting people right at the sort of upper end of narcissistic personality level. So
which is an interesting thing to consider, and maybe that's something we need to deal with as a society perhaps in the future.
I think so. Yeah. So look, lots coming up next week as we continue this journey. We're going to explore mindful relationships in more detail, the difference between empathy and compassion, and how mindfulness can help us to apply both of them skillfully. We should just remind learners, this isn't an introductory course. It was designed to be a kind of part 2. Now, of course, you can do it having not done any other mindfulness practice before, but if that's you, certainly don't rush through the course. The mentors are going week by week. So even if you join this course late, just know that next week our mentors are going to be focusing mostly on, or entirely, I think, on week 2. So you can do the week 1 content, but the attention's going to be on week 2.
Yeah.
Don't rush through. Take your time, particularly with the challenging exercises. You know, really give them time and go slowly rather than sort of pushing through. And if you do find that this brings up uncomfortable material for you or puts you into a place that's hard to be with, consider seeking some professional help. That's always a good thing. And again, just remembering it's a public forum, so just being cautious about what you share and what you say. But thank you for all of your amazing comments and supporting one another. And we look forward to reading your comments over the next week.
Bye for now.